This guy just went all in on his business and he's got a million things to do. And honestly, almost all of them were just distractions. They were, to put it bluntly, bullshit. There are only a handful of things that he needs to be doing right now in his business, and it's at such a consequential time that not doing those important things and getting distracted by the minutiae is killing his opportunity for success. So he says things like, because of this business, he says things like, I just don't have the time. There is no time. I am too busy. And his inner state is one that is always hectic. His days all blur into one. His weeks just end way too soon. And when I asked him about what it's like to be in his brain, like, honestly, the first time he gave me a literal 23-minute spiel of just feeling like I was in a wind tunnel, hearing everything that was going on. And you know what that stage is like in your business, where you just got a million things to do. And this was the first time in months that he just had the space to vent. It just came out. And it wasn't just his business either. He's an ambitious guy. So whilst it's a very consequential time for his business, like I said, it's also difficult in training because he's training for an ultramarathon, and he's at a pivotal time in his relationship too. And he's also winding down some external contracts from his old job that support his business and allow him to go into this full time. His internal RPMs, his revolutions were just off the chart. He was frantic, and I question how much caffeine is on, because he's always like, he just seemed like he was way too caffeinated. And because of that, his business was moving forwards in this ad hoc manner. It would stutter, it would stop and start, and there was no consistency to his growth because there's no consistency in his mind. He was just getting pulled from task to task to task instead of getting clear and focused and prioritizing. And honestly, he didn't know what to prioritize on, or what tasks were most important for him, because externals were dictating his mood, and externals were dictating his urgency, and externals were dictating how well he could execute. So he turned up to this call a few weeks ago, and he was, for the first time in our 2 months or so of working together, exhausted. He'd been giving everything for months, but he still needs to sharpen and lead. He's got a small team. He still needs to be an expert performer. He still needs to handle his day-to-day. He needs to train his team in new standards. And he still needs to make difficult decisions and also think about things that have such a long-term impact, like messaging and branding. But what is his busyness really? Because if we can reduce that busyness and focus on what's important, then we can win. And he wants to do that. But when you look at it and break it down into what it actually is, it falls into three main categories and problems that were really creating this business. Firstly, he was so overwhelmed that he was looking just to outsource everything. He wanted things off his plate. He wanted to get rid of things just so he could think clearly. So all these big consequential things that he was trying to figure out, he was willing to outsource to someone else who did not care about his business as much as him. But really, when you look at this psychologically, he was just avoiding responsibility because he didn't feel competent making the decision himself. He was overworked. He was overwhelmed at his capacity. He was basically taking these dramatic measures to get things off his plate and not have to deal with them, instead of increasing his capacity to deal with them and his capacity to tolerate things being less than perfect. It's very similar, or it's very familiar with a control freak, that I've got to manage everything mentality. Next, he was filling his time, every waking hour, with these unnecessary and unproductive tasks that feel like progress, that you're definitely doing something, but are just box ticking exercises that satisfy the need to be moving forward. I think actually they satisfy the need to be moving rather than moving forwards. Moving forwards is small, difficult challenges, small, difficult decisions, and then moving just generally is frenetic, random activity, and that's what he's falling into. And finally, he was falling into the worst kind of procrastination ever, which is, I don't know what to do, which is really just code for, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed as fuck. And this was just a way to protect his apparently overloaded mind. As a fellow business owner, I know it's easy to get pulled into this urgency. You have limited time. You have a limited amount of energy to dedicate per day. But that is not what makes progress in your business. Progress is identifying this root cause and getting rid of that frantic mentality. And the root cause was that lack of ability to prioritize from fear. Fear was driving it. He was trying to do everything instead of the one thing that would move his business and his life forward. One question really helped him that I asked him. Fast forward 12 months from now, your business has failed. What made it fail? And he had this realization, and you could see, and the answer just popped to him. And it was exactly the problem that he was avoiding, the one that none of his frantic busy work actually addressed. And when I asked him what was really going on with that problem, he brought up real fears, the real concerns, the real lack of capacity. And it's identifying where your capacity is limited that leads to growth. We need to understand your weakness in mental fitness before we can help you grow. So you can think about this like when we lack mental fitness, think of it like letting your form drop when you lift weights. Essentially, you're still trying to push hard, but you're not maintaining your form. You're not doing the work correctly. You're taking shortcuts, which work in the short term. They maybe get the weight up, but they'll lead to injury in the long run. This is exactly what he was doing there. So I've given him this small program to improve his ability to prioritize and let the small stuff slide. And here's the thing. Always pushing harder is the easy option. And it's an option that will work to a point, but it's also the option of a busy fool. It's the employee's mindset, whereas you need a business owner's, a business operator's mentality to thrive. Your goal has to be to do less but better. That is what a business is. Otherwise, it's just hopefully well-paying job, but more often than not, a not well-paying job if you're not prioritizing the right things. We need to focus on the one thing that has the greatest impact. It's 2 weeks since this call where we implemented the strategy in this training program. And now this guy is calmer. He's more effective. And don't get me wrong, he's not perfect yet. He couldn't be because the neural patterns need to ingrain. But he's on his way. He's finding a few little tasks, just getting there. He's learning to deal with the discomfort of having those undone tasks there, but he's getting the main things move forward. We're really asking, what's the one thing that if solved, solves all the other problems you face? And he's got clarity for the first time in months, and he's executing what's really important. I want to wrap up today with this quote from Tim Ferriss. And he writes, busyness is a form of laziness. Lazy thinking and indiscriminate action. Being overwhelmed is often as unproductive as doing nothing and is far more unpleasant. Being selective, doing less, is the path of the productive. And to do that, to execute like that, requires a level of mental fitness that can tolerate more stress without capitulating. And the only way you can do that is by training your mental fitness.